Welcome back to the No Filter Weekly for episode number 3. It is our triumvirate. Is that even the word? I don't know. Shay,
How
maybe
you
you can
going,
fill me
Steve?
in on that one.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go with that.
Let's go triumvirate. Anyway, doesn't matter. We're here. We're off to a great start today. What's the latest in your world? What's been happening?
Not much, man. As we mentioned last episode, we're in lockdown. I think there's another 4 or 5 weeks left. I was just thinking today, I haven't had a haircut for a long time. It's going to be a while till I have my next haircut. So
Yeah,
we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll do some DIY at home
DIY.
and try doing it myself.
Yeah, well, look, I have got my
Got the man bun
lockdown
going
hair
on.
going, a little bit of a, I don't know if you'd even call it a man bun, but look, it saves me actually doing my hair in the morning. It saves me on hair product and polluting my hair with all that sort of stuff. And
That's it.
you know what? It goes with the Iron Maiden t-shirt as well. So far, so good. Maybe when we get back to some sense of normality, I'll actually give myself, or get rather, a proper haircut. But for now, I ain't going anywhere. So I'm
Exactly.
going
That's
back
it,
to
right?
my heavy metal roots here.
Nice, nice. Good one. I think I might grow my hair out. Probably not as long. I probably won't do a man bun, but we'll see how long mine gets.
I look forward to it. I know you're more of a beard growing
Oh,
type than
beard
me.
slash mullet. Yeah, I'll probably grow out my beard as well. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
It's kind of COVID's given us the opportunity to probably do things we normally wouldn't do, and that includes growing our hair and beards as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're more predisposed to growing a beard given your Persian roots.
That's exactly it, right? So we'll see how it goes. It gets a bit itchy, but we'll see how we go.
Fair enough. Well, man, it's been a huge week. Firstly, in the NBA, one of my favorite teams, well, not one of my favorite teams, my favorite team since the 1992-93 season has been the Phoenix Suns. Now, unfortunately, for the last 10 or so years, they've let us down. They haven't made the playoffs once during that period of time. And even this year, they were looking, staring down the battle of, say, a 30-win season. But it looks like they might just turn things around in the nick of time.
Yeah, they're turning into the fairy tale story since the NBA bubble restarted. So I think they're 6-0 now, and yeah, they're just dominating. Every other team's at least had one loss across the 6 games, whereas Phoenix just continues to win, and it'll be interesting if they make it or not. But I remember before they decided on the 22 teams, coming to the NBA bubble, they were iffing and ahhing whether Phoenix should even be there. And now they're kind of proving everyone wrong. And hopefully they make it. It'll be a long shot, but if they do, it'll be a pretty amazing story.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you make of Devin Booker? I heard Lou Williams said something, I think it was on TNT, about Booker being an awesome player, but needing to get the hell out of Phoenix, which I absolutely obviously didn't endorse
Yeah.
that comment. But he was then fined $50,000 for tampering.
Yeah, it was Draymond Green. Yeah, you're
Oh,
right.
no, right. It was Draymond Green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they asked him what he thought. Yeah, and he just said, "Yeah, get the hell out of Phoenix." And it's one of those things where there's a lot of players who get stuck in these smaller market teams and they don't get that big exposure, or they don't, get those, the big games. And that's why you saw, I think Anthony Davis left New Orleans to go to the Lakers. But you don't get that loyalty as much, but it's from a business side and from a player side. So organizations aren't very loyal to their players, and players usually aren't very loyal to organizations. But yeah, Booker seems to have, stuck with Phoenix. And I think he said a few things after one of the games recently about how the fans have been super loyal to him and he wants to kind of repay them as well. So hopefully he doesn't leave. But they're building a pretty exciting young team there, which is great to see.
Yeah. And it's interesting that nowadays, because they've had this terrible playoff run, players of that caliber are expected to leave and go elsewhere. Whereas if you go
Yeah.
back, say, 15 or so years to the mid 2000s, when Phoenix had your Steve Nash's and your Amari Stoudemire's, and Shaquille O'Neal actually went to Phoenix in search of his fifth ring, I believe it was. So
Yeah.
it was the kind of team you'd go to. And the same with Charles Barkley back in the early 90s when he left the Sixers. He went to Phoenix because he thought he could win a ring at Phoenix. And now it's like the tables have turned, and it's interesting to see that play out. But just on something you said there as well around player loyalty, back in the day, it seemed like there was, and by back in the day, I mean, the 90s and prior to that, a lot more player loyalty. Like you could
Yeah.
expect a player maybe to stick with the same team the whole career, maybe towards, the twilight of their career, they'd move on and go somewhere else. But now it's like, man, you could expect to have 6 or 7 teams in some cases over the 10, 15-year career. I mean,
Yeah,
what do
yeah.
you make of this? Do you think this detracts from the value of the NBA in a way, or from the value of the enjoyment of being a supporter of a team?
Uh, it's a really interesting one because I think a lot of people, I'm probably one of them, they support players more than teams sometimes. So I think
I've
people are
never
moving away.
understood that.
Like as in, yeah, but it's true. So for example, I want Philadelphia to do well because I like Ben Simmons, right? And I follow
Yeah.
him, and he's obviously Australian. I want him to do well. So
Fair
if he
enough.
moved to I don't know, if he moved to the Lakers, I absolutely dislike the Lakers as much as anyone else, any other supporter that
Why
hates the
is
Lakers
that?
out there. But just because it always win, and I'm not as big of a fan of the Suns as you, but I do like to see the Suns win every now and again, and the Lakers are one of those teams that used to stop the Suns from winning. So it was just one of those. I think it's, and they've been winning for a long time. Well, obviously, last few years before LeBron came there, they weren't winning as much, but they've been a pretty successful team, and I like to kind of see the underdog win every now and again. So, to answer your question, I think people do support players a little bit more, and it's very different. Like you don't get those play like Dirk Nowitzki was at Dallas for like 100 years or something, right? You don't get that anymore whatsoever, and it's probably moving more towards supporting superstars as opposed to teams as much. But obviously, there's still those big fans of teams out there, but there's a little bit of a shift out there, I think, in terms of who people are actually supporting, whether it's a team or the player.
Yeah, I think I'm the opposite to you, where I will be a player's biggest fan, providing they play for my team, and then the moment they move elsewhere, I freaking hate them. Just like when Sir Charles left the Suns to go and play at Houston with Hakeem Olajuwon in search of that ring, which continued to elude him throughout his entire career. But moving on from basketball, I mean, there are 2 games left in the NBA bubble, so we'll no doubt circle back on that next week in terms of who actually made it through and whether or not it was the Suns or maybe some of the other teams vying for that 8th place in the Western Conference, such as Portland, San Antonio, or the Memphis Grizzlies. Moving on from NBA to cartoons, animations, entertainment. Ren and Stimpy. Did you ever watch Ren and Stimpy growing up?
Oh, who didn't watch it? It was definitely making the rounds on my TV at home.
Yeah, well, you should be excited because Comedy Central has given the nod to a reboot of Ren and Stimpy under an absolutely new creative team. I mean, Ren and Stimpy actually went off the air, I think it was 1995, so 25 years. This has been in the making. Are you excited?
I probably would have been more excited maybe 20 years ago. But no, it's one of those things where I think these shows that were around when you're a kid, coming back, there's still that, element of excitement there just because, as a kid, you'd always watch them. And it seems like there's a lot more of these situations occurring where those old school shows are kind of coming back and doing the reboots.
I think.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, similar ones to that. And even like your older school like movies or TV shows kind of coming back now as well. I know you're a big fan of what was it, the Karate Kid, and how they came out with
Cobra Kai?
Cobra Kai series, and that's a super old show, but they came back and they've got a loyal following of fans who kind of have always loved the movies back in the day.
Yeah. Well, I think No Filter Media will be running a Cobra Kai podcast series once season 3 kicks off on Netflix, because it's
exclusive.
Exclusive. You heard it here first. So if you want to listen along as we dissect the inner workings of Johnny Lawrence and the Cobra Kai, then this is the place to do it. But it's not just Ren and Stimpy, like you said. Beavis and Butthead I mentioned, but also in the movie domain, we've seen the return of 2 of my favorite childhood characters, Bill and Ted. Bill S. Preston, Esquire, and Ted Theodore Logan, should I say. Now, I don't know about you, man, but I probably watched Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure 20 times growing up. I probably watched the sequel 10 times. And I guess that's testament to my being a huge heavy metal fan growing up. I was just as obsessed with Wayne's World, but also just enjoying comedy. I mean, were you a fan of the movies?
Yeah, well, I saw them when I was younger. I probably didn't watch them as many times
I
as
don't think
you
many
did,
people
but
did.
yeah, but I saw it the other day. I saw an article. I don't know if you've seen this. I'm sure you might have come across it, but if you hadn't, I think you'll find this really interesting. They showed there were some videos that were leaked around the auditions for Bill
Hmm.
and Ted,
Hmm.
and they showed like Keanu Reeves auditioning, and who is it? Is it Alex Winter?
Alex
Is it?
Winter, yeah.
Yeah. He was auditioning as well, and they had some other people that were auditioning for Keanu Reeves's role, and one of the people auditioning was Paulie Shaw.
Oh, wow.
Obviously, he didn't get it. Luckily, he didn't. But yeah, so it just shows you that when it comes to these movies, like picking the right people for them make a huge difference in terms of their success. And
Yeah,
luckily, they picked Keanu Reeves.
that's interesting. I mean, Paulie Shaw he had his own sort of niche and things that he was good at. I mean, it was cool for all of about 2 minutes, but
Yeah,
I did enjoy his efforts in Encino Man.
Encino Man. Yep.
Yeah, what was it? Wheezing the juice. Ow! Hey, he was good. He had one trick, but he was good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, with Bill and Ted, the actual plot is that they're now still best friends. They're middle aged, and they need to find one song that will bring harmony to all creatures and save the world from destruction. So they've basically got 78 minutes, along with their daughters, to save the world. And I believe one of my favorite characters from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, Death or the Grim Reaper, makes an appearance. So he's back as well. So I'm super excited and I can't wait to actually, no, I do have the bobbleheads, the Bill and Ted bobbleheads. I believe it was you and
Yeah.
Charity, another
We
colleague
went
of
for
ours,
that.
who bought them for me on my birthday last year,
There
which
you go.
speaks
They're
volumes
probably going
about.
to be worth a fair bit now. To hold on to them, yeah.
They will, they will. And speaking of childhood films and cartoons, what were some of your favorites?
Oh, so many. I remember I watched Power Rangers was a popular one back in the day. Like this is the original. We're talking
Yeah.
the original. I used to watch Hey Arnold. Do you remember Hey Arnold, the cartoon?
Was that
No,
based off Different Strokes at all? Or?
no, it was the one where the main character Arnold had a football shaped head. I don't
Okay.
know if that gives it away,
Yeah.
but if you Google it later,
Let me,
have a look.
let me
You'll
have
know
a
what I'm
look.
talking about.
Let's look right now.
Who else? It's probably yeah. Wait, I'm sure you would have seen this before.
Okay, this looks familiar, but I don't think
Yeah.
I watched it all that
I'm
much.
trying to think what else. I remember, Pinky and the Brain.
Yep, Pinky and the Brain.
those kind of shows.
Do you remember Denver the Last Dinosaur? No? See,
No.
every time I tell people that was one of my favorite childhood films, they just stare at me blankly, like they don't know
I'm not
what the
surprised.
hell I'm talking about. But this was on TV, like, well, I think it was the early 90s, Saturday morning television. Denver the Last Dinosaur. This guy, he was
It
so
looks
good.
somewhat familiar.
Yeah, kind of like my response to your
Yeah.
Hey Arnold.
Pretty much. But what was this? Like early '90s, like late '80s? What are we talking about here? It's
It was definitely the early 90s from memory. I mean, I would have been like 8 or 9 years old at the time,
Yeah.
so definitely early 90s. But look, it was a
pretty cool
dinosaur.
dinosaur.
He could skate. I mean, that's
And he
basically
has-
all you need to know.
And he had sunnies as well. You can't
And he
go
had
wrong.
studies as well. Chuck Taylor canvas sneakers on. So he
There might
was
be a
awesome.
reboot coming. Who knows?
I hope so. Given all the other reboots going around right now, it's looking like a likely proposition.
But do you think all these reboots going on, right? Even when it comes to music, a lot of like new music, they're kind of copying old music or remixing them or remixing old songs. Do you think it's because people struggle to come up with good ideas for movies anymore, or they just want to leverage the old stuff that's already been out there and kind of reinvent
Yeah.
them? I don't know. It's happening a lot more than it used to.
No, I definitely agree, and I've kept these types of sentiments for quite a few years now. And you look at Hollywood and how many Spider-Man remakes there've been over the years, and I think look, if you are a Hollywood studio executive and you're given, I don't know, $50 million is probably an average budget to develop a film, and if you know that most people will just lap up
Yeah.
reboots and rehash stuff that was big 10 years ago. And therefore, your risk comes way down. But at the same time, your effort comes way down too, because you don't need writers to come up with something brand new that's risky. They don't need
Yeah.
to come up with plots and character development and all that sort of stuff. So it's like, well, return on investment. Let's just make Spider-Man, 7 and just call it Spider-Man because it's brand new and it's a new character and it's Spider-Man for the postmodern age and all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Similar to what they tried to do with Ghostbusters, which was an absolute
Yeah.
flop, by the way. Yeah, versus actually trying to come up with something new. But I think that doesn't give the audience enough credit because I think we're hungry for interesting plots with multiple subplots going on where you kind of have to really think about what's happening. And you look at that Korean film Parasite, like
Parasite, yeah.
that was so successful, and I think that signals that people have not only both a hunger and an appreciation for something different. And if you do truly give that to people, they will respond.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's it's a common trend now. So hopefully, I'm sure we'll see a lot more of it moving forward. I don't mind the Bill and Ted ones because it's a new movie. It's not like copying the old Bill and Ted and bringing new characters into it and just kind of doing the same old movie, right? So
yeah,
it probably is going to be it's probably going to be 90% the same.
Got to be 90% the same. And look, I'm not saying that there's no room for these movies, but I just would like to think that Hollywood, in all its glory, can come up with more original content that does well. And I think we're seeing a lot more experimentation now with Netflix, I think. I think the cost to serve has come down quite a bit. But nowadays as well, like if you want original content, you don't need to sit around waiting for Hollywood to create it. Content creators are everywhere now. Barriers to entry have come way down and it's been commoditized. So you can just jump onto YouTube and find all manner of content creators, whether it's documentaries, whether it's infotainment, whether it's short films. Like you can find stuff that is away from the mainstream that could be just as good, if not better, than what the big budgets command.
Yeah, true. There's a lot of information and content and everything at our fingertips, right? So that's it's a very good point. There's a lot. Yeah, you're right. And there's way more content out there than there used to be, say 5-10 years ago, right? So it's a different world we live in.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's kind of like what we have worked with companies on in the past. If you've got a core business model that does well, why would you invest money into exploring new business models that are more likely than not to fail? It's like, well, we just keep churning out these widgets, as they say in your university exam papers, then let's just keep doing that for as long as we can. Like eventually, inevitably, in most cases, the rug gets pulled out from under these companies. But in the interim, it's like, man, the people that make decisions, they're not the company. Like they are there as an agent for that company. And so you have that principal agent problem. They're like, look, I'm only here for 5 years. I want to try and extract as much value as I can from this machine. They're not really concerned with 15, 20 years down the track and what's going to come of that company if they stop thinking about the future.
It's I'm going to link it back to what we talked about at the start of this show, but we talked about players, right? NBA players not being loyal, moving around. Same goes for employees, right? Like employees, I've worked with lots of people who just move jobs every year or two, just go somewhere else, make a bit more money, do exactly the same thing. Not like it's very rare to find someone who's staying in a company for more than, even more than 5 years now. And it goes to show exactly what you're saying around no one's there for the end goal of that company. They're just looking to make their impact when they're there for however many years they are and get out of there and go somewhere else. So it's very relevant to not just NBA, but the working world out there.
Well, this goes even further back than the start of this conversation. I mean, I'm not sure if you've read The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli, but that book, I think it was written during the Italian Renaissance, so like 400 or 500 years ago. And the book was written for the Prince Lorenzo Medici, and it was about how can you maintain power. And essentially one of the things that he said in that book was that don't build an army full of people who are only there for the paycheck, because then you end up with mercenaries. And mercenaries will be quick to stab you in the back once a better offer comes along, or to go and fight for someone else. And how do you deal with that, though, as a founder of a company? How do you hire people who aren't mercenaries? Well, I think a good place to start is giving them, having a mission that really aligns with people, like something they truly believe in, they want to be a part of, and then giving them that opportunity to develop skills, and obviously compensating them fairly and treating them like human beings. Like, these are simple things, but I think they can go a long way versus what a lot of companies do, which is just rely on how much we're going to pay you alone at the expense of all those other things.
Yeah, and I think obviously the bigger the company gets, the harder it is to kind of, do those things where you're treating everyone as a person. When bigger company gets, you're pretty much just a number there, right? And that's kind of how you feel treated. And that's why you're just like, you know what? I don't care, I'll move around. So it's... Yeah, I guess we don't really have that challenge, but we've worked in enough companies to know that challenge is definitely there.
Yeah, and I think, there's something called Price's Law, where the square root of a company's headcount is responsible for half the value. So like, as you say, a company gets bigger and bigger. Say you have 100 people in an organization, square root 10. Those 10 create half the value. They're the most valuable. So if other people outside of those 10 want to move around, hey, fine. But those 10, make sure you identify who they are and take care of them. Yeah, 100%.
That's it.
But speaking of companies and big companies, we mentioned briefly last week that Microsoft was interested in buying TikTok. And I think there was some news and some noise that Apple were also interested in buying TikTok. But Donald Trump, the administration, has basically given TikTok 45 days to sell to Microsoft or leave the United States. Have you been following this story?
No, I haven't. I know we talked about it last week, but have there been any new offers? Any kind of, obviously mentioned Apple, but anyone else in the market for TikTok? I'm sure there'll be a few interested parties out there.
Other than Microsoft and TikTok, I mean, if we look up potential buyers, fielding offers from Microsoft, Twitter, that's basically it, essentially to appease Donald Trump. But I don't know, man. I feel like while this might make short-term sense for the United States, obviously there are all sorts of geopolitical security issues and all sorts of stuff, but this is only from where I'm sitting. I feel like this is just going to add fuel to the China-US fire and make just another shot thrown as part of this. It's almost a Cold War.
Yeah, it's going nuts. Speaking of Trump, did you watch his interview by any chance? He was interviewed by this. It was like, I think it was last week. He was you would know if you've seen it. He was interviewed by this Australian journalist, and the interview went viral just because of Trump's responses and answers to the interview questions. Does this ring a bell to you at all?
Not at all.
I'll share it with you afterwards. But I just
we could probably bring it up.
Bring it up if you can. Yep. If you just put in Trump interview, I don't know, funny or something.
Oh man, that's going to bring up like 5 million.
His name, the interviewer's name was Jonathan. I think it was Jonathan. I want to say Swan, but I don't think it was Swan. But it was Jonathan something or other. Probably fine. You search for it, but I'm really good with the detail.
I think this might be it. All right.
Donald Trump sat down for an interview with an Australian reporter.
Bring up a few minutes
and the
of
result
it.
was priceless.
It's very entertaining.
And he's saying it could well mark the president's end. 3 months out from one of the most important elections in US history.
Donald Trump came with paper, charts and stats, primed for a presidential performance.
We're last, meaning we're first.
Australian reporter Jonathan Swan came armed with facts.
No. Well, here you go. The fake news.
It's not fake news, it's on video.
His follow-up questions and the facial expressions had the trademarks of a comedy skit. But this was a serious political interview.
I think it's under control. I'll tell you what.
How? 1,000 Americans are dying a day.
They are dying. That's true. And it is what it is.
And with those words, rival Joe Biden swooped.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
The president kept insisting the election could be rigged or the results delayed because of mail-in voting.
So we have a new phenomena. It's called mail-in voting, where you send where a governor.
It's been here since the Civil War.
Somebody got a ballot for a dog.
In the United States,
Yeah, look, nothing really surprises me anymore when it comes to Donald Trump. So
Oh no, not at all. I think it was funny because there was I think there was talks around, you know, why would he even let that interview go ahead and all of that. And someone mentioned they're just like people who are on Trump's side and they see these things, they're not going to change their opinion. Nothing like they're just going to see it. They're just going to laugh. They're like, yeah, this is Trump. This is what he does. This is how he thinks. Everyone else who, you know, doesn't really like it realizes how some of the things he says, how stupid they are. They're just going to laugh. It became just a joke interview. And it made a lot of headlines across, I think, last week or the week before.
yeah, well, I think that's true of both sides of the political spectrum. Like, I think there is a lot of people in the middle who are open-minded and will listen to different arguments. But if you're like on either extreme, you've more or less made up your mind. And so if you see someone who says something stupid who's from your side, you kind of downplay it. If they're on the other side, you amplify it. And it's essentially like an echo chamber. Like you only seek out evidence that confirms what you believe and you just disregard everything else. And hey, if you want to be one of those people, that's great. But I think there's a lot more value in being somewhere in the middle and just making up your own mind on things based on, you know, being objective about
100%.
the world.
100%.
And I mean, speaking of that, I published an article which you can find on No Filter earlier in the week called How the Internet Expanded Our Musical Tastes But Hardened Our Political Beliefs. So, I mean, going back to, say, you know, we tend to go back to the 90s. I love this show, but going back to the 90s, how did you go about, I mean, did you have a big record collection or CD collection or tape collection? And how did you go about accumulating that?
It's funny you say that. So I had a lot of CDs. I didn't have records. I think I just missed the kind of the tape era. So I remember singles, which were like cassette singles. I remember that, but my kind of collection started when I was buying a lot of CDs, and I got to the point where it was really expensive. And obviously as a kid, there's only so much money you have in terms of the amount of CDs you can buy. I had this friend at school and at high school, and he used to have a lot of CDs. He used to buy a lot of CDs, and we used to trade and then just burn the CDs. And so we used to increase grow our collections that way. So I had heaps, and I remember my car was just full of like hundreds of CDs in the sides of the car, in the front, in the back, in like I had to buy like these cases to put them all in. It was just
all the CDs would be in the wrong cases as well.
Yeah, that's it.
You'd be like, you'd find an album you were looking for, and here it is, and you open it up, and the CD is not in there.
That's or you'd forget to label. Like if I was copying CDs, I'd forget to label them, and I'd have to listen to them just to figure out what was on there. So to answer your question, didn't have a record collection, but I had a massive CD collection, and I'm sure I've still got some original CDs here or there, but I'd probably struggle to find them.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I find like with the internet making it so much more accessible, like I was the same as you. I think I caught the tail end of the tape trading era. So I had a couple of shoeboxes full of cassette tapes, as well as several hundred CDs, most of which were ripped through MP3s and burning other mates' CDs. And I think there was a website called, I think it was cdcovers.cc or something like that, and you used to download covers, print them off at the school library, and then put them into the case, and it looked almost like the real thing.
But it was terrible printing though, right? It would be like pixelated and stuff, but it was close enough.
Look, it was okay. It was better than nothing, right? It was better than just having the TIAC stock cover in the CDs. So that was good, but I found that most of the time back then, because I only had so much money and because music was hard to come by, like even if you were downloading it online with a dial-up connection, it would take you sometimes all day to download an album. Like you'd use internet relay chat like Merc or ICQ, and you'd set it to download, and because it would take all day, you'd just go off and do other things.
Well, yeah, I would put things on before I left for school. I'd put like 10 songs to download. Like these are 4 megabyte songs, right? I'd put them on at the start of the day. I'd go to school. I'd come back and like, I was so excited. I wouldn't even like be paying attention at school because I was waiting for these songs to download. I'd get home and out of the 10, 9 of them are corrupt and one's downloaded, right? One's fully completed. And I'd listen to that one song for the next like month, you know, repeat, right? Because we didn't have access to all these songs at our fingertips. Now I listen to a song for like 30 seconds. I'm like, nah, this sucks. And I just listen to it ever again, right? So it made you appreciate, I think, music a little bit more and kind of just, you know, having access to it. You kind of appreciated it more then than we, I guess, do now.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, like I was saying, because music was so hard to come by, you appreciated it more, but maybe you also only stuck to what you knew. Whereas I found that with Spotify, for example, you know, Spotify has over 50 million songs on the platform. This is something I uncovered during my research, which definitely put to shame the 300 or so CDs I had. And what I've found is because it's so accessible now, because there is no marginal cost to me of discovering new music. I mean, I pay my $10 a month or whatever it is for my membership. I'm discovering all sorts of tunes, like stuff that I never thought I would have even gotten into. Like the other day, because what was it? I listened to, I think it was Rob Lowe on the Joe Rogan Experience, and he was talking about yacht rock, this genre of music I've never heard of. Now, it's really just like a very particular form of 80s rock. But then I had spent the day listening to yacht rock in the background the other day. It was actually really good. I really enjoyed that. But you know, I've explored everything from like Johnny Cash and country music to Simon and Garfunkel to, you know, hip hop, EDM. Like I still love my metal and whatnot, but I've created so much space for different types of music to the point where like I respect and appreciate all these different forms of music. So I think going back to the point about politics and just having really strong beliefs, like it would be awesome if you had like a Discover playlist for different beliefs and you would actually take in this different sort of information and then develop a better, you know, more empathetic worldview, I suppose.
Yeah, it's I'd probably say you're probably not the majority. Because I guess, you know, when it comes to Spotify, I know with Apple Music, which is what I have, it's recommending stuff that is completely aligned to the stuff that I always listen to, right? So I'm rarely listening to different genres. Like I'd love to kind of be more open and listen to some yacht rock and stuff like that.
Yacht rock,
was it yacht rock? Yeah, yacht rock. Like you did, but you do. But I think the majority of people out there just kind of it's like YouTube and like anything else. They get fed stuff that they're already listening to or already watching, just similar things. So they're more likely to click on it and watch it. Same with, you know, Netflix. You watch a movie, they're recommending 10 more movies that are very similar to the one you watched. So you're rarely getting that exposure to different kind of genres or thoughts out there.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's someone wrote an article about this a few years ago, and they used the term filter bubbles, where, you know, we think these algorithms are doing us a favor, but really they're in some way preventing us from exploring and discovering and experiencing new forms of content, whether it's film, TV, music. Because it's like, because you like this, watch this. It's like, because you like Bill and Ted, you should watch Wayne's World. It's just like more of the same.
Well, I find sometimes I'm like so sick of the recommendations on Netflix that whenever I'm on there, I just go in via the guest profile because it hasn't been, you know, tampered with like my own profile that, you know, knows what the kind of shows that I watch and stuff. And you kind of just see shows and movies and TV that I've never seen before. I'm like, oh, wow, I'd love to actually watch this stuff that is not normally on my recommended list when it comes to my normal Netflix profile.
Yeah. I think that's a worthwhile practice for anyone to do, even if it's just like once every few times. You might discover something completely outside of your normal sort of wheelhouse and really enjoy it, and then just go down a rabbit hole. And, you know, I find there's something like really, I don't know, rewarding about discovering new types of art, whether it's film or music or whatever, and then just going down a rabbit hole of more of the same. Like eventually you just fall into that trap of just listening to that nonstop and it becomes your sort of norm. But initially it's like just a lot more rewarding than just listening to the same old tunes that you've been on since you were like 12.
Yeah. I think it's I think people find comfort in just listening to the same thing over and over again, same kind of music. And I think just like you said, being able to just, even if it's for like an hour, just kind of go, you know what, I'm going to focus on listening to new things or watching new things. I'm actually going to try it myself. I'm going to take on that task. I'm going to try it and see how it goes.
You should do it, mate. You should do it.
I'll see if I end up with Yacht Rock.
Look, it's not a bad place to start if you're going to go down these rabbit holes. Moving on from Spotify, but not so much moving on from politics. Seth Rogen. Are you a fan of Seth Rogen's work? If so, what's your favorite Seth film?
Yes, I have seen a lot of it. I'm like, it's probably one of the genres that I enjoy. Those kind of comedies that he does. I really like This Is the End. Yep. Which is just there.
That was good.
One where they all play themselves pretty much, and the world's coming to an end, and they have to kind of survive. So I thought that was one of my favorite comedies probably. And out of all the other ones I can see on the screen there, Pineapple Express was all right. Just a bunch of pretty much they're about playing stoners in that movie,
pretty much,
which is pretty much like most of his movies. But actually, the other one that he was in briefly, but I think he directed it, was Superbad, which was a very, very funny comedy back in the day.
Yeah. That was, I think that was the first one that, was it Jonah Hill?
Yeah, that kind of made set up his career. Yeah, for sure.
Well, as you can see at the top of the screen here, Seth Rogen has been a very busy man, pumping out a lot of films, whether as an actor, director, or producer, and therefore carries with him or has a lot of influence in Hollywood. And in light of everything that's been going on in the world at the moment with respect to race relations, he's actually come out and said that he wants to actively try and hire fewer white people. And so the quote here was, "I think I'm just actively trying to make less things starring white people. That's why I've been trying to deal with it, just to actively take, as they would say, anti-racist measures to assure that some work is being done to acknowledge that black people are very marginalized in American society." I mean, it's obviously a very complex, sensitive issue, and it's not one that has a easy answer. Like, how do you improve diversity and inclusion, and what are the barriers to more equitable outcomes that are, I suppose, in line with people's interests, but also the interests of these studios, the interests of the films being as good as they can possibly be. I mean, just on this broader issue of hiring and quotas and whatnot. I mean, have you done much thinking about this?
It's obviously, like you said, there's a lot of like layers to it, right? It's not an easy answer for any of this stuff. But in terms of what he said here, I think by making a big statement like this, it's probably going to put a lot of not pressure, but the eyes are going to be on him in terms of what's the next movie going to be like, what's the next, who's he hiring, and I think that's probably going to add extra challenge on his side to make sure he follows through with what he's trying to say here. But in terms of
in a way, just to interject real quick, like sometimes people do that and they make these bold proclamations in order to kind of keep themselves accountable. Because it's like, well, the whole world is expecting me to do this now, so I kind of have to do it.
No, it's true, and but it's a pretty big kind of statement to make, right? This is, he's really got to, I guess, follow through with what he said, because it's, it's out there now. It's like when people tweet something, once you tweet something, you can never get it back. It's out there. It's on the cloud. It's out there.
Oh man, especially these days.
Well, especially these days. So no, it'll be interesting to see how that one unfolds. I think like just at a high level with anything, people should just have that mindset of just, hiring the right people for the roles, whatever they are. And I think, if you kind of take that just kind of general mindset and then, have those extra layers underneath it, I think people will probably make better decisions.
Yeah, I think so. I think the challenge here isn't necessarily, pushing people into roles, whether it's, in the corporate world or in Hollywood, but more so giving people, whether, from all walks of life, every color, every creed, the equal opportunity. But then when it comes to who gets the role at the end of the day, like that should ultimately come down to like who deserves the role, who's best fit for this role, who's the best actor, who's the best accountant, whatever the case may be. Because if you start kind of trying to force square pegs through round holes and you don't have the best people in the roles, then like inevitably that company, the outcome, the production will more likely than not suffer. And then what are the downstream effects of that on the entire workforce? Because if that company is not doing well, then arguably heads will start rolling.
It's a very it's a challenging topic, and as the next kind of, I think the next 6 to 12 months, a lot more of this kind of stuff will come to the surface, and we'll probably have a few more discussions to have.
Definitely. And it's very nuanced, because then you think about an opposing argument that I think has merit as well. And it's something that Malcolm Gladwell talked about. I think it was in David and Goliath, where he talked about junior hockey teams and how kids who were born in the first quarter of the year, because they develop bigger bodies earlier, when they were lining up to get picked for Pee Wee hockey, those kids will get picked first, because playing hockey, ice hockey, the bigger you are, the better you are, initially at least. And they would get better coaching, and then this would snowball over time. So I guess there is also an argument to be made for people who perhaps traditionally don't get these roles. Perhaps they'll always kind of be second class in a way when it comes to this particular industry, because they're not given these roles, and therefore they can't play at the highest level and develop their talents and create that sort of momentum as well. So, it just goes to show you, and I think it doesn't matter what position you have or what position it is, you can always argue for and against quite convincingly, which just goes to show you it's a complex issue with no clear black or white answer.
For sure.
And I mean, in the few minutes we have left, we've been talking a little bit about politics, a little bit about entertainment, a little bit about nostalgia, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. And speaking of music, tape trading, No Filter Media, we've just launched a brand new podcast called Battle of the Bands. And I understand you had an opportunity to listen to an episode before it went live to the world exclusively.
No, I definitely recommend anyone who's into music, who's into kind of competition, to definitely get on and have a listen, especially to the pilot and the first few episodes. I think it's definitely gonna hook people from the very get-go.
Yes,
there's some epic editing on this podcast as well.
Yes. If you want to hear yours truly pull off, or at least try, is the operative word there. Try to pull off American and English accents, then Battle of the Bands is a place to be. But no, look, I like you said, since the dawn of time, as I say in the intro track, we have been sort of compelled, and we've been our attention is just captivated by stories of, David versus Goliath, or Larry Bird versus Magic Johnson. And in music, it's been the same, whether it was the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, Tupac and Biggie. And our first season is Metallica versus Megadeth. And so if you like your narrative form podcasts, if you love your music, this is the place to be. We've got 4 episodes live right now in the Megadeth versus Metallica series, and we'll be running quite a few more seasons over the course of the year. And if you're keen on checking that out, it's everywhere. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, as well as the No Filter website at nofilter.media/battle. With that, I think we're all done for this week of the weekly.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure, Steve. And look forward to next week.
Always a pleasure, Shay. Peace out.
Cheers, mate. See ya.